It began on a gray March morning, when the air in Spokane still clung to the final grip of winter. At precisely 8:15 a.m., two adults walked quietly into the Spokane Police Department. No tears, no hysteria, no urgency. Ava Klein, 32 years old, looked as though she were running an errand, not reporting a missing child. Her partner, Morgan Delaney, stayed close to her side, his expression rehearsed and vacant. They weren't frantic. They weren't panicked. Instead, they offered a simple explanation. Ava's 6-year-old daughter, Layla, had gone missing in the middle of the night. She must have wandered off, they said, disappeared sometime between bedtime and dawn. They didn't call 911. They didn't alert the neighbors. They simply waited 6 long hours, then walked into the station as though the clock hadn't mattered. But detectives had seen too much. And what they saw that morning, 2 overly calm adults, no sign of distress, and 2 older children in tow, sent a ripple of unease through the room. The moment Ava opened her mouth, the officers knew something was wrong. Something was deeply, horribly wrong. And what she said next would lead them into one of the most disturbing child abuse cases Spokane had ever seen. Because Layla didn't just vanish. She had been taken, silenced, discarded, and the people who were supposed to love her most were the ones who ended her story. March 13th, 2021, 8:15 a.m., Spokane Police Department. The morning had just begun to thaw when Ava Klein stepped through the heavy glass doors of the Spokane Police Department. The front desk officer barely looked up at first. Another couple, maybe a custody dispute. But then the children, 2 of them, shuffled inside behind her, their expressions hollow, like dolls missing a string to speak. Ava's voice was calm, unnaturally so. "I'm here to report a missing child," she said. "My daughter, Layla." There were no tears, no frantic shouts, not even a whisper of panic. She stood there with her hands loosely folded, as if she were returning something that didn't belong to her. The officer on duty hesitated. "How long has she been gone?" Ava exchanged a look with the man beside her, Morgan Delaney, her partner. He rubbed the back of his neck, then glanced at the floor tiles. "Since last night," Ava said finally, "around 2 or 3 a.m. The officer's fingers froze over the keyboard. "You waited 6 hours." Ava didn't answer. "We were looking for her," Morgan chimed in quickly. "We thought maybe she went out, you know? Kids get ideas. We thought we could find her." The officer buzzed for a detective. Something felt off. Ava's stillness. Morgan's forced concern. The 2 children, barely 7 and 9, clinging to one another like they knew something the adults wouldn't say. Layla, the youngest, was just 6, and already they were too late. Detectives Lena Morrison and Rob Castle had worked their share of missing child cases. Usually, the parents were shattered, sobbing, panicked, often incoherent. Time was everything in these investigations. But Ava and Morgan hadn't even called 911. Instead, they'd waited until dawn, then just walked in. Detective Morrison asked Ava to step into interview room A. Castle led Morgan into interview room B. Separating them was standard protocol. But it didn't take long before the gaps started to show. Ava said she had gone to bed at 10 p.m. Layla had been tucked in under her usual butterfly blanket, asleep in her bedroom. Everything had been normal. She woke up around 8 that morning. She claimed Morgan wasn't in bed. He told her Layla was missing. He'd already searched. She said, "That's when they decided to come to the station." Morrison nodded, but asked again, why didn't they call 911? Ava lowered her eyes. "We were scared. I didn't know what to do." Meanwhile, Morgan told a different story. He said he woke at 4 a.m. to use the bathroom and saw Layla's door ajar. The bed was empty. He panicked. He searched the house, then slipped outside, checking alleys and playgrounds. For over an hour, he walked Spokane's icy streets. But he didn't wake Ava. He didn't knock on a neighbor's door. He didn't use his phone. Why not call the police? Castle asked, leaning forward. Morgan shook his head. "We thought she'd come back." The lies were already unraveling. Detectives knew something was wrong. But it was what the children said next that would darken the tone of the case. And fast. They interviewed the older kids. First the 9-year-old boy, then the 7-year-old girl. At first, the children were quiet, hesitant, but when offered juice and a warm blanket, they began to open up. They weren't surprised Layla was gone, because Layla, they said, had been in trouble. The night before, while they got pizza and cartoons, Layla had been punished. She didn't get dinner, just a slice of stale bread and water. She cried a lot, the boy said softly. She said she didn't want to go to the lake, the girl added. Detective Morrison's pen paused mid-sentence. What lake? The child shrugged. Mama said they were going to take a drive to the lake. Layla didn't want to go. She cried more. The officers exchanged a look. There had been no mention of a lake. Something far worse had happened than a missing child wandering off. By midday, Ava Klein was no longer holding together. When pressed about the lake, her story faltered. She reached for a tissue, then another. Her tone shifted, no longer calm, just hollow. It was Morgan, she whispered. He kept saying the house was too loud, that Layla cried too much. Detectives didn't interrupt. He told me, Ava continued, either get those kids under control or get rid of them. She wiped her face, her hands trembling. I didn't mean to hurt her. I just wanted to calm down. That's when she admitted it. She said they'd taken the children for a late-night drive to Arrowhead Lake Park. Layla had refused to go. She clung to the minivan door. When Ava pulled away, Layla fell, hit her head. She wasn't breathing. Ava cried. I panicked. Why not call 911? I didn't know what to do. Morgan said he'd take care of it. He said we'd handle it together. They left the house at 3 a.m. According to Ava, Morgan had wrapped Layla's small body in a blanket, but that changed before they reached the border. Too much evidence, he'd said. They stopped at a gas station near Lewiston, Idaho. Morgan bought a length of rope. Ava waited in the car, unable to look at the back seat. They drove to a quiet overpass above the Clearwater River. A remote place, no lights, no cameras. They tied the rope around Layla's waist. At the end, Morgan fastened a rusted brick, pulled from a construction site months earlier. Together, they lifted her, one hand on her ankles, the other on her shoulders, and they let her go. No bag, no ceremony, just water, just silence. It was past 5 p.m. when detectives brought Morgan Delaney back into the room. They'd given him lunch, half a sandwich, some water, but he hadn't touched it. His leg bounced under the table, his hands twitching in short bursts like static. Castle sat across from him, silent for a moment, letting the tension fill the space. We spoke to Ava, Castle said flatly. Morgan blinked. Yeah, she told us everything. The rope, the bridge, the body. Morgan's shoulders stiffened. She said it was your idea. His mouth opened slightly, then shut, then again. Finally, he spoke. She's lying. Castle leaned forward, voice low. She said you tied the rope, that you told her to dump the body. Morgan's response came slowly. That's not. She said she wanted peace. She said she was the one who couldn't handle the screaming. Castle didn't interrupt. I helped, Morgan muttered. But it wasn't my idea. She brought the rope. She said we had to make her sink. That if the police found Layla's body, they'd take the others away, too. His hands trembled. She didn't even cry. She just said it had to be done. Castle jotted the words down carefully. Morgan had just moved from concerned partner to accessory to a crime. You ever tied the kids up before? Castle asked. Silence. Then, sometimes, when they acted out, we didn't beat them or anything, just... You said she screamed a lot. Morgan's face dropped. Layla was loud, always crying. I guess sometimes we punched her. Castle's pen stopped. Morgan backtracked. Just to shut her up? Not to kill her. Castle stood. You're under arrest, Morgan. You're being charged with aiding in the disposal of a body and felony child abuse. Morgan didn't ask for a lawyer. He just stared at the wall. The more Ava was questioned, the more her story shifted. She said Layla had hit her head during the drive. Then she claimed Morgan had hit her upstairs before they even left the house. Later, she whispered a new version, that Layla had stopped breathing after being tied up and left in the bathtub for calming time. Even more disturbing, she said the older kids had helped carry Layla's body to the car. Detectives began to suspect something worse than neglect, something systematic. We were just trying to make her behave. Ava sobbed at one point. I didn't want to hurt her, but he said if I didn't help, he'd shoot me. She said Morgan kept a loaded pistol in the glove compartment, that he'd waved it at her once during an argument about Layla's whining. I was scared, she said. I did what I had to do. The inconsistencies grew, but at the core of each version was one fact no longer in doubt. Layla was dead, and Ava helped hide her body. When police secured a warrant for Ava's home, what they found confirmed every fear. The living room was clean, too clean, bleach stains around the edges of the carpet. A faint smell still lingered in the air beneath lavender candles. In the bathroom, under the sink, they found a rope, stiff, with frayed edges. A single red hair clung to the knot. In the basement were 2 dog crates. No dogs. The older children's mattresses had no sheets. A trash bag filled with stained clothes sat in the laundry room. A neighbor reported hearing screams a few nights earlier. The kind you don't forget, she said. It sounded like a kid begging. The evidence painted a picture that no one wanted to see. This wasn't one night of panic. This was torture, stretched over weeks, maybe longer. Prosecutor Dana Jorgensen had handled child homicide before, but rarely one this cruel. We're not talking about a moment of madness, she told the press. We're talking about premeditation. A child who was dehumanized, starved, restrained, and ultimately discarded like garbage. Ava's defense team tried to mount an insanity plea. They claimed years of emotional trauma, abuse from past relationships, isolation, poverty. They said Ava had been manipulated by Morgan, who was the real monster. But prosecutors showed the receipts, literally, the rope from the hardware store, the cleaning supplies bought 2 days before Layla died, the internet search for how to make a body sink. Layla had been targeted. Her final days were filled with fear. The court never got to see her body, but the jury didn't need it. Ava Klein stood before the court in a gray jumpsuit, her hair tied back in a tight bun. She had pled guilty before the trial began: murder, tampering with evidence, child endangerment. Her final words before sentencing: I'm sorry. Judge Marla Stone didn't flinch. You were a mother. You were her protector. And instead, you were her executioner. She sentenced Ava to 35 years in prison. No parole. No leniency. Morgan Delaney received 22 years for aiding in disposal, physical abuse, and failure to protect a child. Neither showed emotion when the sentences were read. But outside the courthouse, Layla's name was whispered by strangers. She loved butterflies, her teacher told reporters. She always wore pink. She wanted to be a zookeeper. To this day, divers have not recovered Layla's body. The section of the Clearwater River where she was discarded is fast-moving and deep. Silt swirls over the bottom like smoke. Visibility is nearly zero. In April, search teams using sonar located an anomaly that could have been awaited for them. But by then, the spring currents had shifted the bed. I hate that she's still out there, one diver said. She deserved to be laid to rest. But Layla's presence was felt elsewhere. At her elementary school, parents and teachers came together to create a memorial. A stone bench sits beneath a cherry tree. A plaque reads, Layla, who loved butterflies, bubbles, and bedtime stories, forever 6. Ava tried to erase her. So did Morgan. They thought if they got rid of the body, cleaned the house, kept their story straight, they could move on. They underestimated 2 things. First, children speak. Second, the world listens. In the months after the trial, Layla's story inspired reforms across Spokane County. School counselors were trained to look for subtler signs of abuse. A hotline was created for children to self-report mistreatment. And across the country, people read her name. They saw her photo, a little girl with curly red hair, a gap in her front teeth, and a smile too wide for her tiny face. They tried to erase her, but we will never forget. Not Layla, not any child who suffers in silence. because behind every calm smile can hide a chilling truth. And sometimes the ones you trust most are the ones you should fear. This has been another. If you're captivated by real-life mysteries and chilling crime stories, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. There's so much more to uncover, and you won't want to miss a single case.